Tonight we are in Proverbs chapter 4, and we're in one of my favorite passages in all of Scripture. Solomon's going to close out this last section of chapter 4 with one of the most important and insightful scriptures that I think actually are in the Word. He's been teaching us how to live this blessed life, and he's been calling us to be teachable and to have a disciplined heart for right living. And then he gives us this final piece of coaching. In verse 23, he says, above all else, guard your heart, for it affects all you do. You see, our heart speaks of our inner man and the thought life and the seat of our emotions, and it's the innermost part. It's the depth of who we are. And the call here is to watch or protect. The literal idea is to be focused on with an intent to preserve. So what does that mean? I believe Solomon understands our makeup and our wiring. Like it or not, we're emotional beings that are affected by the world around us. Oftentimes, in order to combat this reality, people will harden their hearts in order to create a sense of self-protection or self-preservation. We've been around people that have hardened themselves. They've been hurt, they've been wounded, so they harden. And I believe Solomon knows that when we remain soft and gentle, like he admonishes earlier in this chapter, we are living at risk. And maybe some of you have heard before that you can't love without the opportunity to get hurt. So really, what we're being called to in this text with Solomon is to remain vulnerable and remain soft. So Solomon here advises something that is much better than hardening our hearts. It's a better solution. It is called living with a proper heart guard. So I want to walk us through this text and just show us how. The first thing he'll say is avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. The word literally means to separate from perversion or lying. The root word is distortion or deviation. It clearly talks about telling the truth, being truthful people that don't allow any sort of exaggeration or lying or distortion of truth to be in us. And it deals with the integrity of our communication. What that really means is that we create a culture. We create the culture of our heart with our speech and communication. What comes out of us shapes what's inside of us. That we can create a proper heart culture or an improper heart culture. And he goes on and says, look straight ahead. Fix your eyes on what lies before you. Literally, the Hebrew idea is let your mind regard the goal. That means we are in control of what we focus on. We are in control of what we give our attentions to. And it means that when we lose sight of the Father's goal for us, we're going to falter and get off the path. It's a vision idea. Look straight ahead. We keep ourselves focused on what we know He's given us to do. I want to give us this. What we choose to focus on affects the passions of our heart. Where we choose to fix our attention affects our heart. It affects the passions of our heart. So the safest thing is to choose to fix our attentions on what the Father's called us to. Because that protects our heart. Third thing, he says, mark out a straight path for your feet. Stick to the path and stay safe. The literal Hebrew idea is to weigh out your steps. It is to be intentional. The phrase stick to the path and be safe, the word is to literally remain on, or it's consistency, it's an intentionality, it's a focus, it's a determination to stay on the prescribed path. That phrase mark out is the idea of scribing something out. It's creating boundaries. And I would submit to us tonight that the Father has given and will give us clear paths to walk in. Some of those come through Scripture, some of those come through just the voice of the Lord, some of that comes through the structures of leadership in our lives. But there must be an intentionality and a determination in our heart for us to stay on that path. And if we stay on that path, we stay safe. We're protected. The last phrase, don't get sidetracked, keep your feet from following evil. That word sidetracked in the Hebrew is literally the idea of being on a path and trying and turning and trying to stretch out and reach and grab something outside of the path. It deals with those things that come into our life that grab our attention but draw us away from our goal. And Solomon says we can't let that happen. We looked at that a few months ago in Jesus' life in Luke, when he was going to go through the Samaritan village and they refused to let him. Instead of focusing on the rejection, which could have been a fair distraction, instead of reaching out to touch that and fix it, Jesus just moves on and stays focused on the goal. And that's what we have to have in our lives, is a clear... I love this passage because it's so clear that the way to protect our hearts is to be very disciplined and focused on what God's called us to do. And so here, I want to give it to you and break it down this way. If you're married, God has called you to be a great spouse. If you're a parent, God has called you to be a great parent. If you're an employee, God has called you to be a great employee. What does that mean? It means our life isn't difficult. It's not hard to figure out what He wants from us. It's just discipline and intentionality. Because when I look at this little breakdown of the heart guard, there's some aspects that part of guarding our heart is we choose where we fix our eyes and we choose what comes out of our mouth. Those two things we can do. When we do those two things, it sets us up to be able to move to the next level, which is to walk a path that's right, to know the plan of God. So I would kind of break this into two aspects. I don't think we can know the path of God and walk in the path of God until we have made the decision to deal with our communication and make sure it's pure and integrable. And until we have made the determination to be people of vision that fix our eyes on what's in front of us. Because He wants to bless us. He wants to walk us into destiny. He wants to do great things in our day and in our time through our lives. Wherever we work, wherever we play, wherever we're at in the city, He wants to use us to shape that city. And this is part of how we do it. This is how we protect our heart. This is how we remain vulnerable and soft in one aspect, but yet protected. Love you guys. Pray that you have an awesome evening. Blessings to you. I'll see you soon.